Let's take a step back for a moment and look at what is actually happening in the Middle East right now. Because if you listen to the official briefings coming out of Washington, you hear one message. They say America is winning. They say Israel is dominating. They say Iran is on the defensive. But when you strip away the press conferences, the slogans, and the political theater, a very different picture begins to emerge. And that picture suggests something far more serious. Iran may actually hold the strategic initiative in this war. And if that's true, then the United States and Israel may be walking into a conflict they cannot control. Let's start with the military reality. Right now, Iran is not just firing missiles at Israel. They are targeting a much broader system: military installations, intelligence infrastructure, American bases across the region, facilities tied to surveillance, logistics, and command networks. This isn't random retaliation. This is a deliberate strategy. Iran's objective appears very clear: push the United States out of the Middle East. Not temporarily, permanent. If Iran can make American military presence too expensive, too dangerous, and politically unacceptable for the host countries, then eventually those countries may decide it's simply not worth it anymore. And that is how wars are won without a traditional battlefield victory. Now let's talk about one of the biggest assumptions that may be collapsing in real time. For decades, Israel's air defense systems have been presented as nearly invincible. Iron Dome, Arrow, Dash, David's Sling, layered missile defense systems designed to intercept rockets and ballistic missiles. But the reality of large-scale missile warfare is very different from controlled demonstrations. When hundreds of missiles are launched from multiple directions, from different platforms, using decoys and electronic deception, even the most sophisticated systems can be overwhelmed. And that appears to be exactly what Iran has been preparing for. For more than 20 years, Iran didn't wake up yesterday and decide how to fight this war. They've been studying the United States military since the first Gulf War. They watched how America fought in Iraq. They watched how America fought in Afghanistan. They watched how Israel conducts air campaigns. And they built a strategy designed specifically to counter those methods. One of those strategies involves deception. Missile launchers that appear real, but aren't. Signals that look like communications for attacks, but led nowhere. Decoys placed intentionally to attract airstrikes. Meanwhile, the real launchers move, hide, and reappear somewhere else. It's the same tactic Iraq used during the Gulf War with Scud missiles. Back then, the United States believed it destroyed dozens of launchers. In reality, many of those targets were simply decoys. Iran understands this game very well. But here's the bigger question everyone keeps asking. Could the United States launch a ground invasion of Iran? Let me be very blunt. Logistically, strategically, militarily, that scenario is almost impossible. The last time the United States deployed massive forces into the Middle East was during the Gulf War. Back then, the military was structured to move hundreds of thousands of troops quickly. Today, it's different. Even deploying a single heavy brigade to Europe can take months of preparation. Now imagine trying to deploy hundreds of thousands of troops to fight inside Iran. Where would they land? What port would they use? Every major entry point would be under Iranian missile threat. Ships would be vulnerable. Airfields would be targeted. Logistics hubs would become missile magnets. And that's before you even reach Iranian territory. Then there's geography. Look at a map of Iran. This isn't Iraq. What? This isn't open desert. Iran is mountains. Mountain ranges that separate the borders from the political heart of the country. Any invading force would have to fight through terrain that heavily favors the defender. And the Iranians have had decades to prepare for exactly that scenario. Every pass, every valley, every approach route, they've been planning for this for years. So if a ground invasion isn't realistic, what options remain? Historically, when the United States faces this problem, it turns to proxies. local groups, insurgencies, militias. For Iran, those could include Kurdish groups, Baluchi insurgents, or other opposition movements. But even that strategy carries enormous risks. Regional powers like Turkey would immediately react if Kurdish forces were mobilized. Internal Iranian politics could actually unify the population rather than divide. History shows that foreign attempts at regime change often produce the opposite result. Instead of collapse, you get national resistance. There is also another reality that many policymakers refuse to acknowledge. Iran is not a weak or fragile society. It is a country of nearly 90 million people, a civilization with thousands of years of history, a population that, whatever its internal disagreements, often rallies together when confronted by external threats. And that changes the entire calculation. Wars are not only fought with weapons, they are fought with national will. Now consider what happens if the war drags on. Missiles continue flying. Air defenses are strained. Regional bases come under pressure. Energy routes through the Persian Gulf are threatened. Suddenly, this isn't just a regional war anymore. It becomes a global economic crisis. Oil markets, shipping lanes, energy supplies. Countries like India and China are watching this very closely, because a closure of the Strait of Hormuz would disrupt a massive portion of the world's energy supply. And when global trade is threatened, the political consequences expand far beyond the battlefield. So where does this leave us? Right now, the United States and Israel appear to be escalating air operations, bombing infrastructure, targeting facilities, trying to degrade Iran's capabilities. But there's a problem. Iran anticipated this. Many critical systems may already have been relocated underground or dispersed, meaning airstrikes may destroy buildings, but not necessarily the strategic capability behind them. And when that happens, wars tend to enter a dangerous phase. Because when the original objectives fail, leaders start searching for new targets. And that's when conflicts spiral out of control. This is why the current moment is so critical. Because wars rarely unfold the way leaders promise at the beginning. They are rarely short. They are rarely simple. And they almost never follow the political timeline announced in press briefings. History teaches us something very simple. Once major powers begin a war, ending it becomes far harder than starting it. So the question the world must ask now is not just who fired the first missile. The real question is this: is the world entering a regional war that could reshape the balance of power in the Middle East? And if so, are the leaders involved prepared for the consequences? Because once wars reach this scale, no one truly controls how they end.